And so one of the dimensions, some reviewers have sort of said, there's an association of documentary with earnestness, and maybe that's part of what you're seeing in journalism as well, a kind of, earnestness as truth-telling, and at least one reviewer has pointed to you're kind of breaking that mode. Can you talk about why that's so important? I mean, I think it also speaks to the automation thing as well, right? Humor is one of the dimensions in theory that we imagine will maintain this human AI distinction, but I'm curious to hear you talk about that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think for me the most important that, like, it's so tedious to sort of, like, when you watch a fiction film, there's a way in which that basically the subjectivity of the characters immediately kind of colors your perception. So whereas in documentary so often the main mode of reception is just sort of like, I'm seeing this because it's important, it's telling me this kind of fact. And for me, it's just that once you can knock a person out of that box, you have all these kinds of other opportunities open up to you. And it's like, again, in the context of an article or a news piece, you don't have that liberty because you're attached to a certain kind of tone. You're attached to the notion of exposition. And the idea that in documentary, and it's very rarely done where people will try to specifically kind of push away from, it's not the lack of art, it's just the kind of the dogmatic earnestness and kind of self-seriousness of the medium that I find a little bit as worth breaking or worth kind of breaking, apart from, breaking away from.
One moment like this in your film, The Killer Robots, which for me really stood out, was when there was one engineer in Germany who was interacting with a robotic arm that he built for doing all kinds of industrial tasks, but then you put in music that shows as if he's dancing with this arm, and that it is a principle of defamiliarization, what the Soviet or Russian avant-garde and Soviet avant-garde is thought of. Seeing something with fresh eyes, something, an unusual look at it, and the engineer is just training the robot's arm, but he's being so gentle that music really brings out this dimension of our relationship with machines that later parts of the movie pick up on, that is us seeking companionship or us empathizing or diminishing our empathy, let's say, by kind of trusting robots in this way.
And to me, that also feels kind of somewhat, a gesture like that feels humanistic, because there's a certain way in which, I interview this person, I meet him, I don't know necessarily that much. I can say that broadly that, robotic engineers all tend to be kind of nerdy men that have problems with women and don't have that kind of connection. But it would be, I would feel that it's almost somewhat cruel to just point out that, that this person doesn't get laid or whatever, something of that, and just say that the robots perform a kind of, are sort of substitutes for women, for some of the kind of techie males. So it feels like if you say that in voiceover or you tease it out of a person, it feels like it's overstepping a little bit. But again, when you're using music or using editing, you can sort of just allude faintly to that idea in a way that to me feels fair, because you're not just defining that person by that. They still have a voice, but it's a certain kind of subtext that allows. And I think that, going back to your earnestness question, is once you knock people out of perceiving things just in terms of exposition, in terms of informational flow, then what opens up is this possibility of subtlety and being and this kind of nuanced things that are true, but again, you're not overstating them,